So I'm not looking for like, hey, who's going to be big this year? That's who's going to be big in 3 years' time, 4 years' time, 5 years' time. Because that's when I want to start the relationship. Because when we get 5 years' time and everyone's excited about them, I want them to remember that I was there day one and I've been on that journey with them and we've been together and we've built something. And when everyone else is clamoring for their coffee, they're still going to remember that I'm there and they're not going to forget that. Because it's a relationship, right? You want to see something that's bigger than just, hey, this year you're here, next year you're not.
Hi everybody, I'm David Paparelli, co-founder of M-Cultivo, and welcome back to the Cupping Table podcast. We have a really special episode today, a rare, but hopefully becoming more common, in-person interview, or conversation, I guess I should say. These aren't really interviews, but more conversations, with Roland Glew from Ozone. So he's a green coffee buyer at Ozone. He's got a ton of experience in coffee, gone through he was the original has-been from has-been, or one of, and then went through migration over to Ozone, tons of experience, travel. I was on a WhatsApp thread, I think, that you jumped in on recently where people were asking on advice on their first origin trip, and Roland was good enough member of the community to jump in, and it just made me realize how much experience this man has in traveling around the world. And I think your top tip was bring sunscreen or something. So that was great. But I love some of this shows some of the research the deep research I've done for this conversation. But all that to say, welcome to the Cupping Table. It's such a joy to have you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. It's somebody who listens a lot. It's great to actually be on the other side of it.
Well, an absolute honor that they actually listen to it. I love that. Love hearing that. So if you have listened, you know we have a tradition on the podcast, and the first question I ask people is, what's the best cup of coffee that you've had recently?
I'm going to say it's a coffee we just did a sample roast of, just arrived with in the UK. It's Peruvian, and it's an SL9 washed from Finca La Palestina. And it's really good. It's floral, it's juicy, it's complex. But the thing with coffee buyers, right, is we're always kind of looking to the future, right? You're never in like what's here. When coffee's been with us for 6 months, I'm not interested. I'm always head in the future. And I think this one jumped out at me because I kind of wasn't expecting it. I bought the coffee. I knew it should be good, but it's the first year we've bought the coffee. I didn't know how it was going to travel. And it's even better when it's landed than what was approved on the pre-shipment. And I've had some other amazing coffee recently. I've had a Pacamara Natural out of Bolivia that I probably scored fractionally higher, right? It's probably technically even better, but I knew that was going to be great. And it wasn't quite the same surprise. So I think that we had a little conversation about this earlier, that context is super important in how you enjoy these things. For me, that stood out.
Yeah, and we were talking about the SL9. You were kind enough to bring me a sample SL9, so thank you for that. We were talking about sort of how these coffee lores kind of develop, and the SL9 seems to be an up-and-coming potential coffee lore. You've traveled to Peru, seen these operations, seen what's going on here. What is so interesting or unique about this SL9 coming out of Peru?
I think what you look to is not SL9, it's Peru, right? So we can't be surprised that we have all these up-and-coming varietals out of Colombia because they produced them one after the other, right? And they got attention. Peru's got an altitude equivalent to Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, but it hasn't got the reputation that was attached. Mainly infrastructure, historically, has been really lacking. It's been really hard to get great coffee out of there. But the last few years, they're really upping their game. The quality of processing, the quality of understanding microlots, how they work, they're getting really good at that. And we're seeing the quality increasing really rapidly. Now, the history proved super interesting as well because you had kind of US involvement in spreading varietals there. A lot of US aid support in terms of getting new types of plants in there. And because it's kind of then, they distribute it, there's all these small holders, people forget what they've got, stuff gets trialed and then forgotten about. Loads of people have got these old plant stock, they don't know what it is, they don't know where it came from. It's planted 20 years ago. Maybe it was their parents who had it, like it's all forgotten knowledge. But the potential to rediscover unusual varietals, whether that be kind of Ethiopian stuff where it's hybridization or mutations on the farm. I've seen several really good unexpected varietals pop up there. And I think there's loads more potential for more stuff. It's not surprising that the SL9 has come out of there. Whether this is SL9 or not, I've got no idea. If you want to read the blog post, Christopher Farron does a great explanation on that kind of history, and it's definitely murky as to what it is exactly. But I'm not particularly surprised when I look at Peru that something's come out of there that's really getting attention.
Yeah, it does feel like the kind of origin that should have... It's got that combination of multiple different coffee growing regions.
Yeah.
The terroir seems to be the right terroir for coffee. They've been doing coffee for quite some time. The production levels are high enough to where commercially it's should be like an obviously viable business.
Yeah.
Whereas some countries the production is so low that they're kind of forced to go really high price instead of kind of build a more, middle of the road sort of, hey, great quality, but man, we've got enough to be able to get enough revenue to be able to support this business unit. But Peru just seems that it's always on the verge of kind of complete fragmentation and, hey, we've done a lot of work, quality's really gone up, a lot of interesting things happening, but is it on the verge of collapse still? Like, is it still one of these origins where it's always going to be an underdog, or are we moving into a new phase here?
Like, I think they're never going to compete with Colombia. They're never going to compete with some of these other places because they haven't got that infrastructure. And I think just physically getting around them I don't see how that changes, at least in the short term. Maybe like 20 years time, 50 years time, things will be different. But right now they're investing, but it's still really an uphill battle. The first year I went to Peru, we bought a coffee that I bought on a spot offer. I really enjoyed it. I went back, wanted to buy it directly. So we kind of started something there. And it's incredible coffee. Like one of my favorite coffees every year, floral, tropical, super complex, and it's Bourbon. And it's grown at like 2,000 plus meters in Peru in this tiny, like little bit of a valley where there's like a tiny number of people. The guy Ina who grows it, it's like him and his 9 brothers are most of the people in the valley. Right, so it's super isolated, super restricted. When I saw like the state of the wet mill and his little mill that he's got at the farm, that he was doing this, and I was like, how do you produce coffee that's like this good here? Now he's upgrading, it's improving, and okay, the quality is even better. But you see like what they're working with to produce the quality they're producing now. If they had the kind of installation to produce something really top grade, like you see out of maybe like bits of Colombia, some of those farms, or like with Rodriguez's in Bolivia, then I think you can have some incredible quality. But those are never things that actually you see in most places, right? Even if you go to Bolivia, which I love the Bolivian coffees, right? The Rodriguez is something else. It's stunning. But most Bolivian coffee still gets processed in a very basic way. It's still got the same infrastructure problems you have in Peru. The quality's not there. I think actually there's loads of potential in lots of places because they just haven't got that level of infrastructure or knowledge. If you bring that, then you can produce some really incredible cups.
I hadn't really thought through that completely, but that's been apparent in more conversations as of recent. I mean, obviously we work with some amazing producers. I mean, Los Rodriguez, Panamanian producers, or you go tour these farms, these facilities, and you'd compare it to kind of more of a winery or a vineyard or these kinds of things where you're dealing with stainless steel vats, you're dealing with meticulous production, all this kind of stuff. Even you jump into a place like Ethiopia, just like Peru, and you're just like, man, how? If some of the best coffees in the world are produced in this kind of meticulous stainless steel, that format, how are these other coffees being produced in this completely sort of rugged way, and the quality is nearing the same sort of thing? I mean, you're talking about a game of fractional inches or centimeters, depending on where you're coming from at the top.
Yeah.
And so you wonder if the right infrastructure, the right investment came into Peru or Ethiopia, or name the origin, that is already producing excellent quality, and how much more elevated would the quality be, or would it just be more consistently high quality?
I think that's it, right? So we already see some of these ones. We've bought coffee from Malawi in the past, which is one of my first kind of loves as a coffee drinker was Malawi coffee, which nobody is talking about, nobody heard about it. Having bought coffee from Malawi, it's one of the most ridiculously difficult places to get coffee out of. Yeah. But it produces some stunning coffee, like world class, easily. Floral, complex, incredible cups. However, I'm pretty sure that that's like 1 cup a year, right? They produce this one tiny bit each year. And the problem is twofold, right? It's A, can you identify that cup and separate it from all of the rest? And B, can you then look after it, protect it, get it out in good condition? And if you have an auction system, or you have a competition, or you have these things that help you discover that, and then you have the mills and the infrastructure that helps you get it out, then great, you can do something, you can build a reputation on the back of that. But it's really challenging when you haven't got the reputation to begin with, you haven't got anywhere that can do all that work. You end up just writing off that entire country as being, no, it's no good. And as a buyer, I guess I'm always interested in the ones that people don't talk about.
Yeah.
Like, where's this potential? Because if you put the work in, if a producer's going to put the work in, I think you can get amazing cups of coffee out of a whole load of places that people don't believe is possible. The question is, again, is like, how easy then is it for you? We keep working in Malawi, and I've been working on something there for like 8 years now, and I've not had a lot of coffee out of that. But I keep the conversation going, and you keep trying to do something.
I kind of wonder what comes first in some ways, right? So I'm wondering, as you think about this, and there's something beautiful, intuitive to say, okay, well, if someone would just try this Malawi cup of coffee, this SL9, they'll taste it, and then out of the 1,000 cups of coffee that are served of that, someone will fall in love and then start sourcing it or investing in that area, or there'll be some sort of... But I think, I guess the pessimistic side of me would say that's not actually how it happens. It's actually way more boring than that. Yeah. It's more about, hey, was a road built to that area?
Definitely.
Like this kind of thing. Yeah. Hey, is there fresh water in the area? Is there electricity? Is there, there's the fundamental,
But also, I think the power of an individual person is huge. Like we tend to feel like, particularly if you're in Europe, I'm just one of, so many people in this movement, and I don't really have agency over it. And when we were buying from the Malawi Taste of Harvest, which was a few years back now, before they closed it down, there was one cupper in Malawi. There's one guy to decide what's the good coffee, what's the bad coffee.
His palate was not insured. It needed to be insured. Lloyd's of London needed to insure this guy's palate.
Maybe 2 guys would have changed the country, right?
Yeah.
It's yes, there's all these infrastructure things, but there's also some of these ones you just assume. If you've been to a Colombia, you've been even to a El Salvador, to Brazil, that this is a professional industry. It's not. In so many of these places, coffee is still commodity. We produce it, we sell it. Nobody cares about anything else. The idea that you're cupping for something, that you can differentiate sweetness and quality, it's just not there. Nobody's got any idea whether they're producing good quality or bad quality. It all gets paid the same anyway. If they do really well and they produce great quality, and there'll be people doing that, I know, it just gets blended in with a load of other stuff and lost. One person in the right place at the right bit of luck comes together, they can make something magical. But it's these like tiny little things that the world can turn on sometimes.
Yeah, that it does constantly surprise me, like what you said about the one, the one cup or the one guy. If it is truly, in a lot of these instances, kind of a handful of people, right, that change it. So sometimes one isn't enough. You need 3, 4, 5 to create kind of a bounding community. But if you had 5, I'm just making this up. I don't know what the situation is in Peru. I should ask you this question. But if you had 5 people that were obsessed with making this SL9 the next thing and pouring into that, or 5 businesses doing that, and there was kind of this cooperative competition going on with them, and they're trying to really, that probably does it.
And I think one of the things that's really made SL9 going to be a trend, I'm pretty confident you're right, it's going to be, is Lima. Right? If you go to Lima, incredible food city, but also incredible coffee scene. Coffee roasters, coffee shops there. It's a great place for specialty coffee. There is that kind of consumer side of it as well. And I think that pairing with being a producing country also kind of drives that search and that interest in, we want something new, we want exciting, but we want local. We don't want to do the imported Panama as our fancy coffee. We want to have something Peruvian. And when those producing countries have got that coffee scene as well, I think that could be a really powerful driver.
Yeah. So when you're thinking through some of these elements, these tenets of a sourcing strategy, right? I mean, obviously you have like the brutal economic situation, right? Hey, we can sell a bag of coffee for X in the UK. In a supermarket, it goes for this. When we sell into a supermarket chain, they take a percentage, that needs to be it. So there's just kind of the flow of, this is how the economics of coffee work, and this is the blend of prices that I can pay to achieve this kind of thing, right? But you get beyond that, and this might be a silly question, but in terms of sourcing coffee, how important, like when you're kind of traveling, seeing the industry, seeing what other coffee buyers are interested in, how important is it that just, wherever you're going to source coffee from is a legitimately nice place to visit? Like there's, some sort of political stability, maybe a food scene, maybe a coffee scene, maybe there's elements of authenticity and culture that make it a little bit more exciting. Maybe on the trip they can go to Machu Picchu too, right? Like these kinds of things of how important do you think that is in kind of a coffee growing origins and the actual names that appear on bags?
It's not huge. I think Colombia, from my point of view, like I don't buy a lot of Colombian coffee. I'm pretty upfront about that. And it's kind of because it's too easy, right? And it's not that I don't like Colombian coffees. Everyone will say this, you don't like Colombian. I do. I really like Colombian coffees. But they've got a great reputation, justifiably. They're a place that lots of people visit. It's very possible. They're definitely very easy to connect with somebody directly in Colombia who will welcome you there. Might well be coming to the UK as well. Super easy. And that's definitely been a driver of success for them with a lot of roasters and a lot of places. For me, it's a little off-putting because that's kind of like the easy win, right? And the thing is, when I go there, they know what it's worth. I'm not going to get a great deal. I'm not going to get something I'm not going to impact really positively there either, because the producers, the level of education, knowledge around coffee is really high. It's really hard for me to be really impactful there with what I'm doing. It's really hard to find anything that's surprising, that over-delivers on what everyone would think it does. And kind of that's what I'm looking for. I want something that over-delivers and where there's an opportunity and potential. Because I'm kind of more interested in potential than I'm interested in reality. That's kind of why Peru appealed. When I started working in Peru a few years back now, there was something kind of new for us to work there, and part of the appeal was, hey, let's be pragmatic. We wanted organic coffee. Peru's good at that. It kind of crops at the same time as Bolivia and Brazil. So again, it offsets a little bit from our Central American buying. That means I can have fresh coffee arriving at a different time of year. Again, really practically useful to me. It's not particularly, Lima's a great city. Getting around outside Lima, not particularly easy or fast or convenient. That was definitely part of the appeal. Going somewhere that's a little bit trickier to get around and putting the work in, because you find people who've got great quality and great opportunities, but it hasn't really been picked up on yet. And as a buyer, hey, that's great. That's exactly what I want.
Talked a little bit about sort of this evolution of direct trade, and you're sort of touching, and I feel like this is maybe the pendulum coming a little bit back the other way. Like, there was this idea at some point that direct trade was made up of these coffee hunters that would sort of fly into an area, and they, there's no way to get to it except, hacking your way through a jungle, and then you appear on this coffee farm and you found the best coffee in the world, and then that's victory. And then you go back and you sell that coffee, and you got these amazing stories.
Yeah.
You almost eaten by a lion, like these kinds of things, right? This is what direct trade coffee lore was sort of made up of. At some point, it became this fight for integrity around in direct trade, where it's, okay, relationship coffee.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to build really strong relationships, and then every brand needs to have characteristics of those relationships that they hold kind of near and dear to their value statement. And that has integrity, and then our customers know that. And so when they ask me about, Daniela Rodriguez in Bolivia, like, I can tell them, like, these are the things that we consider. This is why this is direct trade. This is why this is authentic. This is almost what you just said is almost going back the other way of, like, no, a little bit of coffee hunting is okay.
Oh, I mean,
we need to, because there needs to be an element of discovery. Otherwise, are you just doing the easy thing, which is making,
like, if you're going to be the manager of a band, right? Do you want to sign them up before they're famous, or do you want to wait till they're the most famous band in the world and then sign them?
Yeah.
Right. You know where you want to be. Lots of what we do is about looking for where's going to do that. If I want, we are a relationship-driven business, and most of what I buy is kind of the same people each year, the same relationships. So I'm not looking for, like, hey, who's going to be big this year? That's who's going to be big in 3 years' time, 4 years' time, 5 years' time. Because that's when I want to start the relationship. Because when we get 5 years' time and everyone's excited about them, I want them to remember that I was there day one, and I've been on that journey with them, and we've been together, and we've built something. And when everyone else is clamoring for their coffee, they're still going to remember that I'm there, and they're not going to forget that, because it's a relationship, right? You want to see something that's bigger than just, hey, this year you're here, next year you're not. I was thinking about this earlier. Actually, like, all buying is relationship buying. If you're in specialty, you like to think it's this special thing, this direct buying kind of stuff. Talk to commercial coffee buyers. They do relationship buying. They don't do relationships with producers, but they've got relationships with a supplier, with their customers. Just like me, they're going to say, I'll put this work to this person because I know I can rely on them. I'm going to do business with that person every year. And it's not about the price, wholly. There's a big chunk of trust and relationship they build up with a trader. The difference with us is only that we're kind of looking to actually build that connection with a coffee producer, not with just the next step in the chain, but actually to connect the two ends of the chain directly. And the goal then is to create transparency that comes from all of us being connected, and that relationship kind of extending beyond just me.
What are the... You've been doing this a long time now. I mean, what are some of the things when you see in the relationships that have been successful over your career, these sourcing relationships that have been successful, that kind of now trigger kind of these, potential alarm bells? Like, they're like, okay, they have, the quality's there. Okay, but okay, well, that's one factor to potential. Oh, like they're this kind of person. Okay, potential. Like, what are the things that you kind of see, or is it more of just I know it when I see it kind of thing?
No, I think there's definitely things you see, but I also think we have to be honest about the world. It's not good and bad. People are people, right? So I don't divide the world into good people and bad people. Like, everybody's a person. They're all complex. They're going to have strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes those things are going to align with what I need and what I want, and sometimes they're not. Now, there's going to be people out there I can go and buy great coffee from. And I know perfectly well that this year they're going to sell me great coffee. And next year, if I come knocking and they haven't got as much production, they won't want to see me.
Yeah. Because
someone else offered them more. And as long as I'm honest, that's fine. It's transactional, and they can be a good person. I can like them. They're also not giving me any special access. Okay, that's fine. As long as we both know what we're getting, we're all happy. If I find somebody where I'm looking for consistency and I'm looking to have the same coffee and I'm looking to build something a bit more maybe deep and meaningful out of this, then I'm not really looking at the coffee. Sure, I need a certain minimum amount of coffee. I'm probably looking for potential, but more than anything, I'm looking for the kind of person that I believe is going to do that. And this is actually, in a way, it's easier when you're looking at the places that everyone else doesn't know. So the first farm I ever visited was in Costa Rica. Beautiful farm in the Western Valley, called the R-Bar Micromill. Carlos and Maria had sold their coffee to the cooperative. And this was back in 2013, I think. Steve, who founded Has-Been, he was there. First time they ever sold the coffee, not into the cooperative. He cupped it, went, "Hey, this is great. How much do you want?" They went, "How much do you like the coffee?" He went, "I like it a lot." "We'd like a lot then, please." And we were the first people there when they started producing that. And they've grown and they've thrived and they've done wonderful things. I see all that positiveness there. Their eldest son, Esteban, who was not working in coffee, now works in coffee. It's a wonderful progress. And I still get messages from Carlos regularly. They still know they're going to be there every year. I've got complete confidence in that because he was producing incredible coffee when it was going into a cooperative. It would have been so much easier for them just to not really care and put the work in and just get the minimum. So why did they put all this work in when they weren't getting a dividend out of it? Just because they felt they should. Right? If you find these people who are already doing a really good job, the same was true with Ina in Peru. He's producing this great coffee and it's not been selling at great prices just because he thinks, well, I should. I want to put the work in, I want to do this properly. When you find somebody who's already on that course coming in and saying, well, now I'm going to reward you with a fair amount of money to balance that, they're just going to keep going.
Yeah. There's like an inherent dignity to the work or pride to the work that needs to be self-evident, which kind of leads to the next question of, okay, are there things in relationships that you've gone and visited farms or where there've been just red flags? Like, oh, well, we just can't work with people that are sort of doing these things.
I think there's red flags are maybe an overstatement. There's ones that I've been to where I wouldn't start buying the coffee. Not because it's bad or it'll inherently not be good, but because I don't think they're somebody who's interested in a long-term kind of thing. They just want that year and that's fine. But I usually feel that that's quite open. They don't tend to pretend to be something different to that. I think where you do see issues, sometimes success can breed issues. And often we're not the only buyers. There's lots of other people buying the coffee. People can do really well and go from kind of a relatively okay position, but maybe not super well known. They can have some success. They can get a few different buyers. they can build a reputation, and sometimes that goes well, and sometimes they start to get a little bit confident and a little bit, well, I deserve all of this, it's great. I don't begrudge them that, but I also recognize that that can kind of lead to a breakdown in those relationships if they find that they're kind of being a little transactional and they feel like, hey, you're not really important to me anymore, and it kind of drifts away. And I guess I think the relationships are just, coffee buying relationships are just like real life relationships. They're all relationships. And we know in our own lives, sometimes you have a friend and you just grow apart, right? You no longer got the same interests, you no longer really hit it off together. You just spend your time thinking, God, I want to go home now, right? Can I finish this beer and we can say it's enough?
Yeah.
Why are we spending time on this? Because we're not fitting anymore. And that does not invalidate the friendship that led you there. That does not invalidate what came before, but should I necessarily keep throwing more of my energy into sustaining something if it's not valuable to both of us? So I think it's about kind of judging what you're getting back from relationships. Are you putting in what you're getting back?
Mm-hmm.
And if you are, great. But when you feel like I'm putting a lot into this, but I'm not getting the same back, that's a concern. And likewise, from my point of view, I tend to be restrictive in our buying. So if we're buying nearly the entire production of a farm, I'm going to put them at the center of what we do. They have to be something we talk about. They have to be really important to us because we're really important to them.
You're talking about featuring and marketing, that sort of thing.
The way I talk about it to the business, the way I use it, like everything. It has to be built around we're going to be important to them and they're going to be important to us. Mm. And if it's something where we just buy a little bit, it's not putting a lot of focus on it, then I want to make sure that actually we're not that important to them, that they've got other routes for the coffee. Because I don't like being the friend who, when you talk to somebody, you can tell you're just one of a huge number of people who's trying to constantly get their attention, right? Equally, I don't want that the other way around. I don't want to be the guy who somebody else is really excited to talk to and I've got 2 minutes to say hello and then I go again. It's got kind of balance between the relationships that I think is really important and can allow them to be really long-lived and effective is when they retain that balance. And when that balance is lost, you might have to decide, actually, this is not something we should keep pursuing.
So obviously as a buyer, reciprocating, that idea of reciprocating in a relationship happens through, well, do we buy more coffee? Do we buy higher prices? Are we, basically, is there more money flowing through? Sounds like there's other ways to do that, whether you're featuring in marketing or there's prominence or what are some of the, the softer mechanisms to reciprocate a relationship other than just sort of like, we're just going to buy more coffee at a higher price this year?
Well, it's sourcing. You're right. People tend to think about sourcing as spending money. And it's a relationship. And if we're talking about a relationship, again, we've got to really remember that a lot of producers are really smart. They understand that there's value in more than just how much do they get paid. They understand there's value in being consistent. Like, okay, if I don't spend a huge amount with them, but I'm there every single year, and every single year I pay a good price, and they never have to think about whether I'm going to be there or not, there's value in that. Mm. As a business, as ourselves, if we think ourselves, do we want the customer who comes back every single time and keeps ordering consistently? Yeah, we love those customers. And can I be somebody who promotes them and supports them? Yeah, they'll see value in that too. If you're somebody who they know there's somebody else in the UK who wants your coffee and you help ship it to them, great. If you talk about them on podcasts or you talk about them on your Instagram or whatever, they understand that you're doing what a friend should. You're promoting them and being open about this. And I think there's lots of ways to do that. And some of them feel big. Some of them can feel really small. It can just be like saying thank you, can be enough. That first year in Costa Rica on that farm, and technology and stuff moves on so fast, right? We forget the dark days of 2015 when like connecting to the other side of the world was difficult.
Skype was still around.
Skype was still around.
It's shut down now. That's the end of an era.
So I went there, first time I ever visited. I couldn't speak any Spanish at this point, but I got a guy who spoke kind of a bit of English, and he was doing some translating. And I get to this farm in the middle of nowhere. Well, it's not middle of nowhere, right? It's Costa Rica, so it's really easy to get to. But for a British guy who'd never travelled outside Europe, it felt like the middle of nowhere. And I get to this farm, and the first thing I get from Carlos is a hug. Straight into the house, head of the table on a Sunday, and a big meal. And he just gives me a hug and says, "You're one of the family now." And I suddenly realised how much power we had as a business. The first people who bought the coffee, and he doesn't get coffee buyers visiting all the time. And I'm sitting there saying to him, "Hey, I sent your coffee to over 1,000 people last week who are our subscribers, and they tell me they love your coffee. I've given your coffee to people who tell me that they have to have sugar in their coffee, and they didn't need sugar in it." And right, getting the money is a prerequisite, right? That's a minimum. But all of us, we want to hear somebody say to us, "Actually, you know what? All this work you're putting in all year round, it's appreciated. It's valued. It goes to people who know your name and care about what you're doing." That's something that, particularly if you're in the kind of service end of coffee, you take for granted, right? You're doing that all the time. And the more you get into roasting and sourcing and then into production, and you go along that chain, the more and more you don't get that. You lose contact with where it goes. And that can be a really powerful tool. They can then turn, and I've seen people do this, they turn around and say to, "Hey, I've got a team of people here at the mill or on the farm. I'm going to tell you, hey, this is our buyer from wherever. They love the coffee, they love the work you're doing. That's adding value." And you're right, you can't quantify these things.
But showing up is, I mean, so if you compare it to just any other relationship, right? I read this at some point where it's, if you want to be friends with someone, the simple thing is just go do things together. Like there's just this active togetherness that means, some level of relationship, some level of friendship. If you don't do those things or you don't spend time with somebody, then you don't really have a relationship, right? I mean, we are sort of interconnected in that we've got WhatsApp, we've got video calls, we've got all this stuff now. I mean, you're still seeing that actually going and visiting and spending time, multiple days, incredibly costly to do that for any business. But is that a part of kind of reciprocating this relationship? Is that a part of adding value? Is just showing up?
It is, and it's a tricky part, right? This should be a difficult balance and a decision for businesses because, I mean, I don't like airports. I love visiting with my friends and with producers and all of these things. I don't like sitting on a plane for 20 hours. It's expensive, and that cost is going to get passed along to the people buying our coffee. And it's not good for the environment that I'm doing a lot of traveling. So I'm not traveling to every single place we buy coffee from. There's some coffees I've been buying now for a long time that I've never visited. And I would dearly, dearly love to visit them, but I can't quite justify it in the scheme of things. But you're right, being face to face, it's meaningful, it's important. We're going to go back to Peru again. I'm using the same example all the time, but
it's a helpful through.
Well, it's a really good one, right? Because Ina, who we buy from now, is the first one. I cupped his coffee on a table, bought it spot because it was great. Went to Peru to meet the exporters, and was like, "Hey," I was there with a group of other buyers, and with Origin Coffee Lab out there, and they said to me, like, "Hey, last day," I was like, "I really need to visit Ina." "Okay, well, we've got this other thing on," but no. I was like, I need to. That's my one thing. I haven't visited anybody else's coffee I've bought this year, but I've seen Peru and it's been good, but I really need to see him. And it's then like 2.5, 3 hours drive to the village. And then we started asking around, and we found this like 9-year-old girl who was like, "Hey, that's my uncle. I kind of know." Okay, so she jumps in the car with us and we drive a bit more. But it turns out she didn't know, really. So we find his cousin, and his cousin's like, oh, he'll be on the farm. So we drive for another 5 minutes. We get out the car, and the day before, there'd been this big event for the coffee buyers. They'd organised this football match, which I was not prepared for. And it was us against the cooperatives late at night. And I'm dressed just as I am now. And these guys come out in their full football kit on the field. And oh God, this is bad. So there was me and a couple of guys from Nordic Approach, Ferg from Roasted Brown in Ireland. And we played football and it was bad. It was humiliating. But more painfully, I slipped on the ball, went down and did my knee in.
Oh.
So I had to hop off the field. So we get out this car in the middle of nowhere, and Ina's farm is like half an hour uphill, and I'm hopping along, literally. There's a stream, I have to like hop over the stream. I get all the way up there. I see him, and we talk for like maybe 10 minutes. I say hello. He's looking at me going like, who's this weird gringo? And I go away again. And I came back the next year. I get out the car, and he looks at me and goes, oh, it's you, how's the knee?
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm the first buyer he'd met who'd come back a second year. He'd had buyers come by,
Yeah.
and they come and they go, and they all say nice things, but I've been back 4 years in a row, and I see him, and I have a look at the farm and how things are going, and his house, and his family. We have dinner, we talk, and after that second year I came back, they're telling me, oh, he's asking us all these questions now. He's onto agronomy, he's got some new pruning techniques, he's doing some new plantings, he's changing things, and it looks amazing. And I really feel it's just that moment where he looked at me and was like, you're back? Really? You're back? Okay,
Yeah.
Great. This changed how he thought about things.
Yeah.
And you're right, if I hadn't been there in person, that wouldn't have happened. 100%. I know if I traveled more and did more places, there'd be opportunities like that. Things would pop up. But, as I said, it's a balance.
Yeah.
You can't do everything, so you have to try and make some hard choices on places you don't go and places you do go.
It's good there was a positive spin on the blow your knee out story, especially as like there's nothing you want less than if you're British and you show up and they're like, you're the guy with the really embarrassing knee injury that was here last year. I remember you. Like
if it gets you remembered, take it.
Yeah, so kind of back into some of the sourcing, sort of sourcing discovery and that reciprocation of kind of relationship. What are some of the things that you see with on the other side of the table, so to speak, with coffee producers of good way they can reciprocate value besides just obviously keeping prices consistent or lowering prices and selling you, exclusive lots and more volume, whatever those things are.
I think the biggest thing is always honesty, like straightforward transparency, directness. As a buyer, I really appreciate somebody saying, hey, it's going to be a really bad year this year. We're not going to have a lot of coffee. I can do you half of what I did last year. Great, no problem. Because that's easy, right? That's straightforward. I can fix the problems that generates. I'm not going to be a diva and throw my toys out the pram and say, hey, but I want what I got last year. I want a better price. If I'm investing in this, I'm going to go in and try and be open and honest about what I want, what I can do, what I can't do, what I need. And I want to feel the same as returned.
Yeah.
I want to get recognition and a balanced level of recognition, right? Maybe I can't get as much coffee as I had last year, but I want some coffee. You may be able to say, I can only find you like 8 kilos. I don't care. I'm smart. Let me figure out whether I can buy it or not. But give me something. An acknowledgement of, you know what? This is appreciation of the work that's gone in. If you can't do anything, then just tell me at the beginning, I'm really sorry, there's going to be no coffee this year. The lack of coffee doesn't necessarily break down a relationship. The lack of trust breaks things down.
Mm-hmm.
So don't tell me it's going to come if it's not going to come. Like it has to be open and transparent.
There's also an element of, and this is what makes it so difficult in the kind of that tightrope that you're walking, right? It's like, okay, there's a ton of potential here. You know, we're going to be in a relationship, which means that people are going to screw up. You're going to have to forgive them for things. Like, there's all of that mess, but there's also just, hey, we just need to be honest and accountable for what we've done. If there is no coffee, there is no coffee. If the coffee got messed up, then we need to be honest and accountable for that. But when you're kind of walking this tightrope, it's so much easier for so many reasons to drift towards the easier sourcing relationship, right? Okay, there's a, American guy or a English guy living in this country that has the same culture and values that I grew up with. And so I understand all of the subtext of what he's saying, and I understand everything that's going on. He's able to be a cultural translator and handle that. And you know what? He just delivers the coffee, and it's the quality I want, and it's on time, and it costs what he says it was going to cost. Whereas you go the other way of the spectrum, and you don't get any of that. There's cultural dissonance. There's a different language. There's a language barrier. There's potentially a delivery risk. There's certainly a quality risk. There's all these other things. It's like, man, that's a really, you're making it sound simpler than I think it actually is to actually walk that tightrope, right?
I agree. Right. There's a reason that a lot of the people who've been successful a lot of the producers who've been successful in building relationship sales are themselves US educated, they're English fluent, they are experienced in all of these things, right? So this is definitely a massive advantage for them. And I love some of these smaller producers where maybe that's not the same, but they're hard work. I agree. I can't do all of that. And when we source, there's a mix. Some of the people we source from are kind of super easy, right? We source from the Maresh family in Nicaragua, and I love them, and they're also really easy to work with. They know exactly what they're doing. The quality is consistent. I can explain to them exactly what I want, and I know that they'll deliver it. It's super easy, efficient. I don't spend a lot of my time and energy maintaining that. Mm-hmm. I don't value that less. They're super important to us as a relationship, but I'm honest that that's a low amount of work that goes into making sure that that's solid because it's kind of easy. And there are other ones, like I know, right? I'm buying a lot less coffee from him, but maintaining that's a lot more work for me. And I couldn't put that level of work into everybody we source from. I have to be a bit picky about where I really want to try and build something new and develop a relationship, and where actually, okay, that needs to just be kind of a safer, easier one. I don't think that's a bad thing to do that, to acknowledge that. I don't think the relationship has to be any worse that you've happened to do it with somebody who's got more in common with you or more able to connect with you. Yeah. It's still a valuable thing. You just have to accept that maybe your impact is a little less than it might be on some of these ones where you're trying to jump a kind of bigger distance.
Yeah.
But I do think also there's more in common than you think there's going to be in common. Maybe this is actually more of a reflection on somebody who grew up rural. Like I grew up in the countryside in the UK in Staffordshire, and I remember meeting producers for the first times and thinking like, I could drop these guys in Staffordshire and they'd be fine. Like I went in with a different producer in Costa Rica in Tarazoo for a day, and I just kind of got dumped with him when my Spanish was still a little bit on the rusty side, and he was driving me around, and I could just imagine if I stuck him down in a farm in Staffordshire, it would be like 3 to 6 months before anyone realised he didn't speak any English. Because they just pass each other in the field and go, whoa, whoa, every day. And that would be fine. He'd sit and watch the townies spinning their wheels in the mud.
Yeah.
Like, a producer is a producer, as a farmer is a farmer. Like, there's actually lots of similarities that run far beyond our kind of specific language and culture into something that's much more basic.
Yeah.
And if you're familiar with those people, I feel like you can often connect with that it's challenging, I agree, to like some of the, particularly the next step, right? Exporting is the hard bit. Right? When it comes to like connecting with these people, it's easy. I definitely need adults to step in and help. I couldn't imagine doing what I do with Ina in Peru without Ozone Coffee Lab. Mm-hmm. Right? Jose, Maria Gracia, the team there, they're amazing, and they've encouraged those producers, they've encouraged me, they make it all possible.
Yeah.
And if I'm looking for somewhere new and I want to do that somewhere new, I wouldn't necessarily jump straight to that final end place, right? I actually look for the partner and find somebody who can be that middle person to support the relationship and say, okay, great, got you. Who should I talk to? Where should I look? Give me a lot of stuff to cup. Where's the next step? I don't just kind of, if you want a coffee hunter myth, you don't just like parachute into the middle of some jungle somewhere and start looking. You've got to take the next step of who's got good coffee, who's a good partner, who the people I trust. We started buying from Honduras. I buy a few different things, but the exporter we work with is Behamin Paz, and the first time I think I heard Behamin's name was from the Maresh family. It was from Wingo, who was like, he's a good friend.
Yeah.
You should talk to him. Straight away, I've got a recommendation for somebody I trust about him. And that speaks a lot to me that, okay, here's somebody who I should be able to connect to, talk the same language, is going to be reliable at least. The next step is a very convoluted story, but we ended up buying some coffee from a friend of his because I'd actually... It's a great story, but a very convoluted story. Like, you get the story anyway. During COVID, like many of us, I was starved of attention. And I didn't talk to any other coffee people. And I was really fed up with it. And a guy who was doing his master's at Manchester Business School said, hey, I'm doing this thesis on coffee buying. Can I talk to you, interview you? I'm like, great. Yeah, we'll do that. So we had a Zoom call for an hour and a half, 2 hours or something of me talking about coffee sourcing. And at the end of it, I'm like, why are you doing this? Why coffee? And he said, I'm Honduran, my family's got a farm out there, so it just seemed like a really just, okay. And if you're in sourcing, the follow-up question is, of course, I'd love to try your family's coffee. You're always going to say that when you've had a nice chat with somebody. And he's like, yeah. Next harvest, I'll see if I can get you something great. Okay. I didn't feel it was really going anywhere, but it probably wouldn't work. I have no idea how we were going to get the coffee, but anyway. And then the next thing that happened was I was in London, which I only do maybe kind of once a month, every 2 months, something like that, at our offices there. And an importer, Langdon, had brought round Behamin Paz, who was visiting them. They were buying his coffee. He was visiting the UK. They wanted somewhere for lunch. They went, hey, can we come to Ozone for lunch? Yeah. Well, I was around. Did you want to join? Yeah, I'm around. I'll join. That'd be nice. Get me out of some meetings to go have lunch with some nice people. That sounds great. Behamin arrived. He saw the coffee from the Maresh family as well, actually. And I was like, okay, you buy their coffee. Great.
Yeah.
We had a nice lunch. That was kind of it. Didn't go anywhere particularly. We went away. And then a couple of weeks later, it was the Manchester Coffee Festival. And this guy who'd interviewed me, Alejandro, he said, I'm going to the coffee festival. Do you want to meet up? Yeah, go on. So I saw him. We said hello. He said, I've got some samples for you. Okay, great. Here's some samples of the farm. And I said, it's weird. Like, you're the second Honduran coffee producer I've met in like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I said, who did you meet? I met this guy called Behamin Paz. I was like, Behamin processes my brother's coffee. He's his best friend. I'm like, what? Okay. So you can see where this goes, right? I cupped the coffees. I loved them. I went, okay, I know Behamin. I know an importer in the UK who I know and like, who's bringing it in, who I can work with. I like their coffee. I've met some of the family. Suddenly I can make all this work and it all comes together. Mm-hmm. But that first moment when I was chatting with Alejandro, I was just taking a punt. I got no idea whether I had no expectation that would come together. 9 times out of 10, his coffee would have been processed at a different mill and it wouldn't be anybody who was selling to the UK and I wouldn't want to work with them and it wouldn't go anywhere. It just so happens that I got lucky, and it all came together that it all kind of fitted, and there was a route. And the relationship stuff, sometimes this stuff sounds like it's luck. But there's that old saying, right? Luck is you work hard, you'll get lucky eventually. There's so many more of these occasions that happen to me where you try to pursue something and it never quite comes together or it doesn't quite work. The question is, are you persistent? Do you keep trying and keep looking? And when things do come together, do you get smart and you try and figure out ways to solve the problems and take the next step and get closer to that goal? Mm. Or do you give up because it's not easy?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain amount of, and coffee still runs this way, and so it's a physical good. At the end of the day, a physical good needs to be, taken off a tree and transported to the UK and roasted. Like something needs to be. There's no cheat on that, right?
Exactly.
Like there is industries like technology or software. I mean, there's a certain amount of this feature doesn't quite work, but we're going to launch anyway, right? Like the coffee it's a little bit more difficult to fake because it is so evident. And so physical to it, and in that, I do think that what you're saying is right. Where kind of subtext to what you're saying is there's this underlying value of kind of the referral network and the relationships that you've already built in coffee and how you kind of build on those. Whereas at this point, where this wouldn't have happened to you when you first started your career, but at this point, you could talk to a producer almost anywhere in the world and almost know immediately whether you can make the supply chain work or it won't work, right? I also hear you talking about, which I'm super interested in, is talking about kind of the supply chains that you are operating within and the relationships that you are sort of investing in from a sourcing perspective, almost like a portfolio, like an investment portfolio, where it's like, okay, these guys, I'm not going to put everything in Bitcoin. It's too risky. Like I need some sanity. I can't have that level of volatility in my life. I need some money in a savings account that's just kind of cranking out, 3% interest every single year, and that's what it does. And then I've got stocks and bonds, and I've got I've got this portfolio of things and risk that I'm willing to take. And maybe I do an angel investment here and there because I think it'll go to the moon, and I love the guy, and I just want to see the potential and see it flourish. I mean, do you feel that way?
Oh,
and
100%.
then the second part of that question is, do you have kind of limitations or regulations or discipline around the percentage that you allow within these different types of relationships?
Now is where I really hope that my bosses aren't listening to this. I 100% think of it that way. If you talk to a commodity coffee trader, and we're all working in coffee, right? We're all trading coffee. As much as people want to pretend that commodity and specialty are totally different worlds, they're not. They're the same world. There are different ways of looking at it, and very different lots of ways, but they'll talk about risk a lot, right? From their point of view, risk is something that gets quantified and measured by a department who will do the financials on it. What's the level of debt that we could be in if this person can't pay their bills? How extended are we? What's the costs? This is the financial assessment of risk. I would always advocate as a roastery buyer, if you're buying green for a roastery, you need to be more holistic in how you interpret risk. Risk isn't just like how much debt have I got, or how much have I committed to versus how much do I think I need. It's how confident am I it will turn up when I need it to turn up. Because if it doesn't turn up, I'm going to go to the spot market to solve the same problem. How confident am I in how it will travel and its quality? How confident am I that it will last me 9 months? Because I want the same coffee to last 9 months in a blend, versus maybe they've rushed the drying this year and the quality is going to drop after 6 months. That's an issue, right? So if I've got a lot of confidence in somebody, that's reducing my risk. I need to be thinking about how stable is the country? Is it one where I know that it's going to be fine? I need to be thinking about what happens if, by case situation, hey, we lose a lot of customers, I've got to sell some of our coffee elsewhere. Can I sell it? Is it saleable? And that requires some weird insight into the opposite side of things, right? Into what other green buyers are looking for, which is not necessarily the same as what I'm looking for. I think that idea of thinking about things with risk is really important. And balancing and managing those risks is very, very important. Understanding what risks you're taking and what risks the producers and other people in the chain are taking is important, because all risk should be rewarded appropriately. Importers, auction business, all these other people, they're taking risks. They deserve financial reward that reflects that level of risk. And as a buyer, if I can then say to somebody, hey, I can make your life easy by reducing your risk for you, I know I'm going to get a better price and make things better for everybody. I can say to a producer, you know what, I'm going to pay the same price for the next couple of years. I know they're going to be happier with a lower price than they would be otherwise. Mm-hmm. I can go to an importer and say, hey, I can guarantee I'm going to take this coffee, I need you to hold it for 6 months for me, but I'm going to take exactly 1/6 of it each month for 6 months. So your warehousing cost, your financing cost, all the other things you're incurring, they're going to be manageable and predictable. They're going to be a little less. I know that I can shave a little bit off the cost if I do that. Now, as long as that risk works for me, and I look at my own business and go, hey, that's easy. I know we're going to do that anyway. So it's not really a risk for me. But I'm thinking about what's a risk for the other people, and have I got easy ways to reduce that? So yeah, I think...
there's a difference in the mentality, though, what you just brought up, that I think people miss that are sitting at a trading desk, right? And if I'm sitting at a trading desk and I'm working at a commodity brokerage firm and the coffee is a subset of what I do, sort of thing, the way I think about risk is going to be more from a macroeconomic perspective. So it's going to be more from a diversification perspective. It's going to be more, et cetera. I go the other way. I don't know if you feel this way. I go the other way, right? So a portion of our business is pre-export financing. Yeah. And in that, you have a portfolio of coffee producers that you're financing their harvest for, and you're looking at what is the risk that any number of them default and which ones will default. And I feel like we pick people, we don't pick countries, we don't pick regions, we don't pick political situations, we don't pick... I think 80% of the risk portfolio falls on, is this guy going to do what he said he's going to do? Yeah. Like, is he going to be able to deliver coffee? Is this a person that knows how to evaluate, see problems coming, and then be able to solve those problems as they come at you? I mean, there's been civil wars, revolutions in countries where coffee still ships. Somebody's shipping that coffee. I mean, you have Houthis bombing container boats off of Ethiopia. People are still shipping. They're finding other shipping routes, right? There's people solving problems and getting coffee on boats and getting them delivered. Yeah. And that's not my expertise, but I know there's the kind of person that can do that. And if I'm sitting at a trading desk, I don't see the people. I don't know the people. I can't evaluate what I think personally as a coffee professional is the most important risk factor, which is kind of the person that's making the decisions at the origin level, right?
But actually, if you talk to the commodity guys, they're doing the same thing. They are evaluating risk. They're not evaluating it with the same level of knowledge, right? They're making a very simplistic model of saying, hey, I need to buy 5 containers of Vietnamese Robusta. And there's 50 people in my Rolodex who say, hey, I can sell you that Robusta. I'm picking one of those people. Yeah. Now, which person am I picking is going to be heavily driven by who has been there. Last time things went really wrong and I needed some hustle and I needed someone to solve stuff for me, who pulled it out the bag and was good for me and reliable. You get my first pick this time round. I agree. Like it's a much more limited, but it's still a relationship, right? You're still looking at that risk and that relationship. Yeah. You're just focusing in a very narrow sort of way at one part of the chain, and you're trusting that person to handle everything on the other side. What the trouble with that is, we've seen historically, it creates disproportionate power for one part of the chain. So when I build these relationships with producers, right? I go there. The importers often will know, I want the coffee from that producer. I'm working with that importer and that exporter because I can get the coffee that I want. That importer, that exporter is providing a service to that producer and to me that enables me to have that coffee. If that producer is not happy with the work that exporter is doing or the importer is doing, we're going to change because they're not supporting us. By creating transparency or more transparency throughout the chain, it doesn't mean necessarily I'm doing more work, but we're creating more honesty. We're creating a situation where, like, those guys in Peru have got my WhatsApp number. If they don't like what Ozone Coffee Lab are doing, they can WhatsApp me going, you need to have a word with those guys.
Yeah.
If I don't like what the importer's doing, or Ozone Coffee Lab don't like what the importer's doing, they can have a word with me and go, I don't like what's going on here. And it's just creating a bit more transparency around that because we all know each other. And those trading model, it's just very reliant on I don't want to know what's beyond the next step. That more commodity model is just, hey, I know you, I don't want to know what's behind you. The relationship thing is just saying, hey, I really want to know, I want to know everybody. And if I go there, and like, this might happen as well, like I might go to a producer who I really like, I might like the exporter, but we go to a mill, and I'm like, don't love the mill. Like, not my job to decide on it. It's my job to be honest with my partners and say, you know what, don't like this. It's not a bar. If the quality's good and it's consistent and everyone else is happy, that's fine. And this has happened to me. Producers have asked me, said, hey, look, we're moving to this mill. Can you go and give me a read on it? Of course I can. Mm-hmm. I'm just giving you my opinion. I've been around a good few mills now. I got a feel for it. It's clean. It's organised. They're good at cupping. They seem to be well laid out. Ticks all the boxes. Great. Lots of space. No rush to move lots around. Plenty of time to dry things. Lots of positives. Happy. Equally, if I go there and go, hey, whew, that was pretty messy.
Yeah.
And they didn't really know what they got where, and stuff was just kind of piled up in a bit of mix, and they didn't know where things were or what it was, then I'm going to say that. Mm-hmm. It's not my decision, but I'm just providing another friendly opinion. But coffee is reliant on much more than just one producer, one roaster. You know, even at the best of kinds, there's all these extra people who have to be involved in the process in getting coffee from a plant to a cup. There's always going to be so many people. And we need to recognize and value the contribution that all those people bring. And equally, sometimes we're going to have to hold some of those people to account and say, oh, you're not doing a great job at this.
Yeah.
Or you're not being a good partner to the rest of us. It's not just like the roaster who's losing out here. Because if that producer wants a relationship with the roaster and the exporter's doing a really lousy job, then they're going to lose it. They want that coffee to sell at a solid, consistent price each year and know they've got a chunk of money coming in every year that's easy to work with. That's a great thing. Every single producer you talk to, like that's the most common producer dream, right? They say the dream of direct trade is, I want to know I've got a buyer who will just turn up every year, buy 50% of my crop and pay a solid price that's a bit above the minimum. Not crazy, but like I'm going to make money on it every single year. And even if they get a bit bigger, they say, hey, great, look, maybe that other 50% I can try different things with. I don't mind taking some risk at being in the market because maybe it'll be a good year on the market and I'll make a load of money. What they don't want is, it's a bad year on the market because suddenly that 50% of their crop that they're losing money on, they want to know they've got that 50% secure and it's balanced and it's safe and it's suddenly, we can invest in the long-term stuff. So that's why they value the long-term, right?
Yeah, there's some basic economics around it, but I could definitely see the other side of that. You brought up the micromill in Costa Rica as a great example, right? Where you might have been the first buyer to show up, but then others came and they grew their business. I mean, because they're looking, again, from the other side of the table or from the other perspective, they needed portfolio buyers, and they need to assess the risk on the portfolio buyers, because this is no surprise, but coffee roasting is probably just as risky as coffee farming in terms of building a business that's and then even if you build a successful roastery, you become a victim of your own success.
Yeah.
You've gone from has-been to an Ozone sort of commingling and then merger acquisition sort of situation. Yeah. And I'm sure as a part of that, certain sourcing relationships had to be either lost or gained or shuffled. And you know, if I'm on the farmer end, I was like, man, it really sucked that Has-Been was buying 50% of my, I'm making this up. Yeah. I'm not saying you did this, but Has-Been was buying 50% of my crop, and now they don't want to work with me anymore. Now I'm in that market situation where, you know, it's a down market and I'm losing money on 50% of my crop. I said, wouldn't it have been better if I had, you know, 4 buyers that were buying 25% each, Absolutely. And I could throttle up one of the 25% to 40% on the years at a good price, that one of the buyers drops out, right?
I think probably the smartest guy I ever talked to about this was Luis Rodriguez, who's from El Salvador. He works in QC. He was in the Consejo at one point. He's super knowledgeable, been around all these different parts of it. One of the most wonderful coffee geeks I've ever met. Incredibly knowledgeable about varietals and that kind of side of things. Great cupper. But I was talking with him about, because we buy his coffee, and there's a small number of other buyers he's got. And the same buyers come back each year, but it's not a huge number. There's like half a dozen or so of us who come back every year. And it's actually his mother-in-law Gloria's coffees, but he kind of handles who it's going to for her. And he was like, yeah, this is the smart level. It's like, I've got a full-time job. I can't manage my full-time trying to sell to like 2 bags to a guy in the US and 2 bags to a guy in Dubai and 2 bags, whatever. So that I've got a limited amount of capacity in my year. So I'm picky about who we have. I want like 5 or 6, and it's not too many in one basket, as you said. I'm not like laying all my eggs on here. If it goes wrong and one of those is gone, I'll have to find a new home for that amount, right? And the flip side is I'm not constantly trying to woo buyers. And each time I go, I'm going to go out to El Salvador at the moment, like we're going to spend a weekend together. It'll be 2-3 days with them. And we're going to hang out all day on the farm. We're going to drink beers, have pupusas. It's going to be like, I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah.
They, as a family, devote real energy to me, and I feel valued. I feel like I can be really open and have these conversations about what have you got this year, what works, what hasn't worked last year, what went wrong last year, how do we get better next year, how do you solve the problems that are coming up? And I know that the other buyers will feel the same way, and it's that balance. And as you say, not everyone gets that. Mm-hmm. It's really hard if you're like a new producer, particularly if you're starting out in that, hey, I've just found coffee, specialty coffee. I've got a buyer, they're buying nearly everything. They get lost in that excitement of what that means. There's definitely an element of, if you get a bit bigger, you've got a bit more scale, you start to see that bigger business element of, okay, well, maybe they won't be around forever. Maybe I need to build options. I will go so far as to say I've encouraged people we buy from to do exactly that. I said, look, I know I can buy all your coffee, but I shouldn't. And I really want you to try and sell your coffee to someone else. Mm-hmm. Not because I want you to sell a lot to them, but I want you to diversify. I want you to be a really strong business. I want you to be resilient to last. And if I have to come that year and say, you know what, we've had a major disaster, I can only buy half the volume I normally buy, I don't want you in trouble. I want you to have somebody who's ready and waiting in the wings who can take that step up and fill the gap. Yeah. I don't want to encourage them to step up earlier than needed, but I don't want somebody to be reliant on us.
Yeah. Well, there's got to be an assessment from the other side of what is reliable. Is because any coffee producer will be really excited if someone shows up and, okay, I've had a roastery for a year, maybe 2 years, and shows up and, okay, this is the first direct trade relationship I've had, and really excited about that person. But, anybody who's been in coffee and has this network of buyers will do the same thing. Hey, have you heard of Roland from? What do you think of this guy? What do you think of Ozone as a business? Is this gonna work out? And then just being able to kind of quickly assess that situation and say, okay, well, this is a really high risk. Maybe I will sell him 5 bags and just see how it goes and see how the business does, and let's just start that relationship. Whereas, but I don't want that to be 25% of my buying portfolio, right? That kind of idea. To kind of wrap this up, I would be curious on just what you're looking forward to in specialty coffee over the next, year or two.
Some nice washed coffees.
Yeah, a wash per bone. That's what we're looking forward to. Clean wash per bone.
I kind of am. So it's a really interesting and challenging time for coffee. Obviously, there's so many things going on in the world. I think a lot of us are not really feeling about, hey, we need to innovate and try new things. We're saying, hey, we need to stabilize. We need to find new solutions to these new problems that are coming up, because none of us saw US tariffs. None of us saw some of like the export issues out of Ethiopia. Like, these were all things that we didn't have the power to see coming. We've had to be very reactive and resolve the problems. I think we took for granted for a long time that the world just worked, that, you could get a container out of Central America, be in the UK in 3 or 4 weeks. It's nice and simple. The dollar's a nice, stable currency to work with. Don't worry, it's nice and easy. All of that felt stable, and it's the current world has shown that that's not true. So I think we're, as an industry, it's a lot less about like, where's the big innovation? It's going to be much more about, how do I create resilience? And I hope, like, it's the hope here versus expectations, right? I feel like the high price of coffee, I've definitely seen a push among some people towards lower quality, and conversely to higher quality, right? So they kind of separate. The micro lots the nano lots, they're buying small amounts of super high scoring fancy geisha, and then the rest is quietly being nudged down the quality scale a little bit. And that gap in the middle of good quality, clean coffees is probably under more pressure than it was in the past. My hope is that as much as that financial pressure has been doing that the market will demonstrate that most people want that middle ground. There's a fixed market for the fancy stuff, and it's growing, and it's great. But it's never going to be 20% of the UK population, right? Yeah. It's never going to be huge. But I can buy an 86, 87 point washed Couture, Bourbon, these kind of things. I can give them to my wife, who has milk and sugar in her coffee, or to my mum, who just throws something in a cafetiere and hopes for the best. And they'll still turn around and go, oh, that's really nice coffee. Because it is, right? That is better than the 82s to the 84 point coffees. I hope that the market will prove out that actually there really is a lot of appeal and people willing to pay a bit more for well-processed, well-looked-after coffee. That doesn't have to be the highest scoring coffee in the world. It doesn't have to be in the top 90-plus bracket. It can be in those regions of just, this is really well-processed, well-looked-after, cared-for coffee, and you can taste that in the final cup.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big believer in the sort of, and I'm not on the roasting end. I've never claimed or worked as claimed to be a roaster or worked as a roaster, but I've always had an appreciation for this kind of lost art of blending. And from the sourcing perspective, I've been on that end, and that is an incredible feat to be able to get the right price levels, the right quality levels, the right origins, the right harvest schedules, all to line up so the freshness in the cup is demonstrated and it can hit, and most people enjoy that. And I think there's a fragmentation that is bound to happen at some point, but there's a separation where the high prices are kind of losing gravity to these sort of amazing coffees that you could blend and make an amazing cup. And it's just the focus of all of that requires almost its own skill set sourcing, right? So you can't be all things to all people. And most people are going to want, hey, I just want a good cup of coffee. Like, and I just, we talk about anaerobic and I get it.
This is like the evolved, we're as a roaster, you're in like an evolving ecosystem that's not the market it was 10 years ago. I started into specialty 15 years ago, and specialty was the niche, right? All you said was, I'm specialty, and people are like, oh, what's that? Okay, wow. In 2007, 2008,
hospital,
yeah, like 2007, 2008, there was 4 specialty roasters in the UK.
Yeah.
And now I walk down the street in London, and I can't find a shop that isn't claiming to sell specialty coffee.
Yeah.
So more and more, there's niches within specialty. Right? There's the roaster I can go to when I want my super fancy geishas. Yeah. There's a roaster I can go to when I want the weird anaerobics. There's a roaster I can go to when I just want, whatever that niche might be, whether that's be about the flavor of the coffee or your aesthetic, or the things that you're associated with, or you're like a biker one, or you're a metal guy, or whatever that is, right? Yeah. You've got your own specialty brand, and I think that's the reality now. We need to be smarter about roasters. Who are you?
Yeah.
What is the thing you do? What are you trying to sell that makes you different to every single other one of those ones out there? Because it can't just be our coffee's a little cheaper and tastes as good.
Yeah.
Because
you won't win. Strategy.
That's not a strategy, right?
It's not a good strategy. I mean, I guess it's a strategy. It's not a good one.
It's not a good strategy. You have the opportunity, particularly if we're starting up and we look at these smaller roasters. I think the success is all going to be about clarity of what you want to be, what sets you apart. And if you're going to be doing really good stuff, like I was chatting with Ippon, who are the micro roasters, started out at Sail Moon, super interesting. They've got and I love the fact they had a really clear vision. I was chatting with Gage, and he said, okay, look, what I want to be like washed geishas. I want super clean, high-end coffee. That's what we want to be about. I don't want big, funky, co-fermented stuff. I don't want big, boozy naturals. If I want naturals, they're going to be super, super clean.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I want to do. And I said, great, because I think you're going to succeed because you've got real clarity about what you want to be and what you don't want to have.
Mm-hmm.
And as when you're doing sourcing, often saying no to stuff is harder than saying yes. Like, I see a lot of good coffee come across my table. I see lots of stuff that sounds like a really good deal, but it doesn't fit a need for us. That has to be the question, is not whether it's good or the rest of it. It's whether it's what we need at this moment.
The most defining elements of your strategy is what you say no to. Like that ultimately kind of defines what your niche is and what you become. It's honestly a little bit easier thing to think about, at least initially, is okay, the inclination when you're running a business is to say yes to everything because you just need revenue, you need cash, it's oxygen. Like, let's just try and be all things to all people. Why can't we be all things to all people? But that isn't a strategy. The strategy is, no, we're going to say no to these 12 things, and that means we're really good at these 2 things, and then that's what we do. Right?
And as a buyer, if I think it's hard for me to say no to some of this stuff, imagine what it'd be like if I was a producer and I'm saying no to somebody coming and wanting to buy my coffee. Like, that's going to be incredibly hard to do. But I also think I know producers who've done that, and that's been a super courageous and important decision on their part to turn around and say, you know what? No, you're not a business I want to work with. You're not somebody who I feel I can rely on.
You have producers that are establishing kind of wait lists now almost, right? Or the it's like you get on the list, and then and it's like kind of a polite way to say no, without kind of, it's like, hey, all my crop is spoken for. We'll put you on the list if anything comes up. But you also have them in your back pocket, and they feel really excited if you call them, and they better buy the coffee then, because you don't then.
Absolutely.
So there's a psychological element to it as well, not just a strategic.
But also, those producers, are, particularly once they get into that position of being able to choose, because there is demand for their coffee, they're starting to understand you can only lose reputation. Like, building it slow, losing it's really quick, right? You sell your coffee to the wrong person, and it can be disastrous. Because, like, many years ago, we had. I will anonymize all of this, but right, we had a coffee that we had bought world exclusive on, right? We got the entire lot from that farm. We knew it wasn't anywhere else. And I had saw it on sale at another roaster. So I went to Steve, who was the boss at that time, and said, okay, look, what's going on? I thought we had all of it. And he's like, oh, you said, yeah, we do, but we've only had it for like 2 years. So 3 years ago, it was being sold to other people. So they've got 3-year-old crop from this farm, and they've got the farm's name on their website. We've got the farm name on our website. And I was still following kind of the forums and these kind of things. I see people talking about it, and they're saying, hey, I had this coffee from this other roaster, and it's really kind of herbal and like twigletty and like not nice. And I think the farm's just not very good. And I'm thinking, this is terrible, right? This is the farm's reputation. But that farm has done nothing wrong. That farm was producing incredible quality. But the consumer doesn't know that's a fault of the roaster.
Yeah, that's right.
Because we're telling them, hey, quality begins at the farm. They're just blaming the farm, right? So as a farmer, you're a producer, you're starting to say, hey, do I trust this person to represent us and look after us well? Or are they actually going to be devaluing the brand?
It's a small network too. People don't realize. Yeah. My eyes opened the other day when a producer told me a similar story of they went to a coffee shop in Europe, and one of their friends from a different country, different origin, like completely different, and they tried their coffee, and the coffee was horrendous, and they called their buddy, who's the producer in the other country, and said, hey, I'm here at this coffee shop, and the coffee's not very good. Nobody, the coffee shop knew this guy was a producer or anything. It's not very good. I don't know if I just want to leave that with you, but I don't know if I'd sell it to them in the future, because they're basically, this is the only experience in this European city where I could get your coffee, and it's a bad representation of your coffee. So an entire community of people is being exposed to a bad representation of your coffee. I'm sure it's the same thing with probably not as much of a cliquey nature to it, but I don't know if I probably would do something similar if it was a really bad. Like, would I call a producer that we work with and kind of give them sort of a heads up that it's not very good? Like, I don't.
It's a tough one, right?
It is a tough one. I would be less likely, but I might if it was an absolute atrocious experience.
Again, I think it comes back to the relationship stuff, right? So like if I just bought somebody's coffee, would I phone them up on the basis of I had a bad cup of it somewhere? Definitely not. Are there people who I've got a close relationship to, and they say, hey, I've been contacted by this person, and I might go, yeah, I know them.
Yeah.
What have you got to say? Nothing else.
Yeah.
Right. There are occasions where it's kind of like the reference on a job application, right? Yeah. The power is, okay, I'm not going to say anything about that, and you can draw your own conclusions. Like, it's definitely a trust thing, like the rest of it, right? There are people I know, and the relationships maybe more surface level, and I'm happy to be honest about my experiences and all the rest of it. And there are definitely people who I'm closer to, who, if I saw them talking about connecting with somebody who I was like, I've got reason to believe that might not be good for you.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to find a way to
signal that
over a beer or whatever, a way of like a chat late at night over a pint.
I mean, that's usually all. I mean, I've heard that line a few times over. This is a cultural difference, I think, between Brits and Americans. But that's usually how I get told things over here is that's a conversation for over a beer. And then you don't have to have the beer. you already know where that's going to go. Like, what do you think of this guy? Yeah, I mean, I know conversation over a beer. Okay, well, we could skip the beer at that point.
I don't know. I had a similar one. I had met someone to be like, yeah, let me call you rather than replying to a WhatsApp. And I'm like, I don't really need you to call me anymore. As soon as you told me you couldn't just type this.
I don't want this in writing.
I know what I need to note that, yeah.
Exactly. Too many screenshots of WhatsApp sent around of like, can you believe this? Anyway, Roland, well, thank you so much for the conversation today. Anybody listening to this will come out fairly quickly, I think. We'll leave that to Franco, who's in charge of production now, but I think he'll get it out the next day or two. So Roland will be wandering around Central America at that point, to find good coffees and good relationships.
I definitely will if you're there. Feel free to come say hello. I hope you won't see me and recognize me, but if you do,
yeah, I'm sure there'll be plenty of producers, but it'll be El Salvador and
Guatemala.
Yeah, that'll be a great trip. Well, yeah, thank you for joining us on this. We'll get this out. You guys should all check out Ozone, obviously. Buy some good coffees from Ozone. And keep track of Roland. I mean, he's always doing some interesting things in the space. He's been a great teacher, mentor, and addition to the coffee industry and coffee community. Just appreciate how you've carried that all of these years. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity to talk, which you can see I enjoy doing. And thank you so much for creating a platform, not just for me, but for producers and so many other people to share that knowledge, because I think this is really super important to the industry. And as we go forward, it's going to be more and more important for people to be able to listen to the people out there and actually have those conversations and create space for that.
Could not agree more. All right, my friend. Well, we will talk to you soon. We'll catch up. And thank you to all you listening. We will see you on the next one.